Authenticity over perfection. That is something you've heard me talk about time and time again. Well, there's somebody else who has been singing the same tune. Her name is Jess Jensen, and she started her own business to help executives and leaders like you to be authentic online. Learn all about it coming up. Hi, I'm Karin Reed. I'm a 4-time author, Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist, and communication expert on helping people to own the room, whether it be a physical one or a virtual one. Welcome to Speaker Dynamics. Jess Jensen, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Karin.
So you call yourself the C-suite whisperer. What do you mean by that?
Yes, that's a fun term. I certainly borrowed that from somebody else, so credit does not go to me. I've worked with the C-suite for about 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And inside of a corporate environment, first, of course, sort of sharpened the saw and built a practice. And then now I've brought it out into the wild with Copilot Communications. So I really enjoy working one-on-one with seasoned senior leaders, whether it's someone inside of a big Fortune 500 company or it's someone who's a founder and a business owner. I just enjoy the relationship, and I enjoy being able to, again, be that co-pilot, be their coach along the way as they think about how they want to show up publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about Copilot Communications. You launched last year. And one of the things that you say, I'm going to quote you, is you say, you can't be what you can't see. So your mission is to help leaders be seen clearly, confidently, and with purpose. So tell me a little bit more about that. What is Copilot Communications all about?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I love that quote. I use it with my own daughters, and I use it professionally. I'm a huge believer in my own background too, that if we don't have models of what something looks like, it's difficult to imagine ourselves in that role. Mm-hmm. And I think back to even when I was in business school. So I was in my early to mid 20s. I had worked for a few years in between undergrad and grad. But still very early in my career. And I remember going to business school with other people my age, even younger in some cases, who were dead set on starting their own company. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, how would you even know where to start? Like, we are 24, 25 at best. Like, what? And in my mind, like the clear track was I was going to go work inside of a company. I was going to kind of take the corporate route, which I ended up doing. But when I fast forward to here today, I realize now that a lot of those peers that I went to school with, they had parents or uncles or aunts or neighbors who were business owners, who were entrepreneurs. And so it was a great example of where I couldn't be what I couldn't see. I didn't have those examples in my own family. And I only gained those later in my professional life. And then again, as we all sort of grew up and became more seasoned, some people broke off from corporate and started their own companies. And now I have so many role models. But I just think that that's the case with a lot of things in life. It takes a very unique person to be able to construct or build something without any examples or models in front of them.
Yeah.
So to connect the dots with Copilot, I think that it's very common for senior leaders to underestimate how many people look up to them, whether it's their immediate directs. If they're looking over, a 10, 15, 30,000 person company, it's the entire employee base in many cases. They're up on stage at all hands meetings, at keynote presentations. They're up in front, right? People are paying attention. And I think that it's important to be reminded that you are a model in all the best ways, right? Yes. You have a platform. So what do you want to use it for? And I like the idea of working with them to think about digital properties, which is my background. So digital marketing, social media, whether that's LinkedIn, whether that's podcasting, there's a lot of different opportunities based on what feels right to you to shape your platform, to tell your stories, and to really be that that honest and human model for all of those folks that are looking up to you daily.
Yeah. And that's actually, I wanted to concentrate on today, the work that you do in digital communications and specifically with executive branding, I guess is the best way to say it. But you had a really illustrious career inside corporate, working for Microsoft and Nestlé and Qualcomm and Adidas. I loved how you mentioned that you set up their very first Facebook page, which I think is a great reference, like something very visual. But how has that work that you did inside corporate informed what you do today?
I can't imagine what I would be without it. It's the better part of 20 years of my adult life. And you outlined it very well. Those 4 companies were really where I've spent my career. I was always in digital marketing, always in brand, and always in communications. Over the course of those 20 years, as we all know, social media came to bear, and that really blossomed, of course. Now it is a core tenet of any marketing campaign. But I remember when I had to still pitch it. I had to convince my GM that this was a thing. This is here to stay. We need to pay attention to this. And what was the reaction like initially? Were they like, no, it's just a fad? Like what was that conversation like? Yeah, it was some combination of it's a fad, it's a trend. It's almost like what we thought reality TV was going to be. Right.
I sometimes wish it was.
Right. Sometimes you wish it was, for sure. But I remember watching Real World on MTV in the early days and being like, what is this? This is not going to stay. Oh, wrong. And so I think there's that perception of like, this is just a temporary chapter. This is not going to replace TV or print or out of home or all these traditional mediums. And then the other one was, well, that's what my kids do. My kids they're there, but we're not talking to kids. We're talking to adults that have wallets. Why would we bother with that? So a lot's changed, right? In 2025, a lot's changed. But what I love about it is that with that change comes opportunity, like anything. And so the notion of brands being on digital and social spaces is now ubiquitous and almost to the point of saturation, where actually the opportunity is individuals, right? Because people want to follow people. Mm-hmm. And we saw it bear out in the numbers. I mean, this was part of the impetus for building the executive digital communications program that I launched at Qualcomm in 16, 17 timeframe. We saw from a brand standpoint, all of our numbers started to really deflate, right? Our reach, our engagement, all of the metrics that we'd tracked for so many years were declining because there was just so much competition, so many voices, so many brands, so much content, and trust was going down. People don't trust brands for the most part. They trust people. So we realized, this is an opportunity. We've got some senior leaders who are willing to experiment. They're a little curious about the space. We know a lot about these spaces. Why don't we stand some of them up and let's do this for a number of months? You have to obviously build that momentum and let's see what happens. It's not a replacement for corporate marketing or corporate brand building. You always have a foundation there. It's an augmentation. And, not surprisingly, we saw really strong numbers. In fact, it got to the point where we would see 3x the engagement from our CEO's content than we would from our brand.
So interesting. Yeah.
So it was a really nice way to kind of further evolve digital and social to be in service still of the company, in service still of growing, but using human individual leader voices in addition to kind of the foundational brand marketing.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you said, I can't remember, I've been doing my research on your work and you were talking about how this isn't about PR polishing and performative posting. It's very different. So let's talk a little bit about the process that you walk executives through in order to establish that strategic and authentic digital brand or presence.
Yeah, you said it so well. It is so easy to, especially again with a larger corporation where perhaps you have the resources of an entire communications team. Recognize if you're a founder or small business owner, you probably have one or two people, but the different scenarios there. But if you do have that team or you even have an agency, it's very easy just to sort of regurgitate, reshare, repost. And It's fine, but it's not going to move the needle. It's not really you. And people
not your voice.
It's not your voice. And it's also not your point of view. Like that's part of what I think leaders forget is that they see and are exposed to conversations, environments, experiences, speakers that most people are not. So their followers want to hear that. They want that inside behind the scenes scoop. And of course, you need to be thoughtful about not sharing material information or things that would damage the reputation of the company. But setting those things aside, there's still a lot that can be shared that's really the depth and the richness of your background, your experience in the industry, and then what you're seeing today and what you foresee will happen in the future. So that's what I really work with leaders to do is, there's of course important moments in time, product launches, big news that needs to be shared. But all the day to day is what people are more hungry for. So to your question, there is kind of a 5-step process that I usually take my clients through, and
let's walk through it. Let's do it.
Summary. Yeah.
Okay.
Do a synopsis. So number one, we definitely need to define our audience. That's fundamental. Who is it that you're trying to attract? Right? Who do you want to read or see or hear from you? And
that must be really hard, Jess, because especially if you are the leader of a multifaceted company that has all sorts of, constituencies, how do you have them figure out who do you specifically want to talk to? I think that would be really difficult.
It is. I mean, it's a conversation, not a fill in the blank.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And usually there's multiple audiences. It's, potential customers, even just take that word, potential customers, which of course, almost any leader, business owner is looking to grow and scale and wants to attract future business. But even within your potential customers, is it a business decision maker? Is it a tech enthusiast? Is it a mommy blogger? There's a million different ways you can slice and dice the next sort of consumer or customer that you want to attract. And then there's even additional audiences outside of sales, right? There's, there is
partners partners.
Yeah, if you're a publicly traded company, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say partners and peers. There's so many different ways you could go with it.
Yeah, partners, peers, potential collaborators, right? There's a lot of businesses that have collaborators and partners that actually co-develop products or services together. There's also the financial world, right? If you're a publicly traded company, the street, you care about what the street thinks, right? Perception is everything. And if you're not, then you probably have shareholders, or a board. And then there's employees, right? People forget the sort of the internal, right? Again, all those folks that either currently work for you or your team, or maybe they're future talent that you actually want to attract to your team in the next 6-12 months. Those folks are paying attention too. So there's a lot of audiences, and definitely defining your audience of one is a challenge, but we want to start somewhere. We can always iterate later.
Yes.
So that's number one. Number two, and this is also not a simple exercise, but it's part of the work that we get to do together, is defining, and I would say in under a paragraph, right? So 4-5 sentences, defining what your core values are. What do you want to stand for, right? Do you want to stand for servant leadership? Do you want to stand for globalization? Do you want to stand for the beauty and the power of AI and all the goodness that's going to bring in your industry? Let's talk about across sort of your personal value system, how you show up as a leader, and then of course your industry expertise. Those are kind of the 3 territories we often kind of dance between. What are the three-ish core values that you want to stand for? Because that's going to start to shape your editorial approach and the topics and the territories that you're going to repeatedly be talking about in public.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I went through an exercise similar to this, and I remember when I had the conversation, which you said is not a fill in the blank. This is for sure not a fill in the blank. I had, I think, like 3 pages in answer to the question of, what's your mission and values? And we did winnow it down to like 4 bullet points, but it was hard and it hurt my head. Like, I don't want to have to go through this exercise so much. It's just easier to make it, long form, but it is really helpful and it crystallizes your content for sure.
Yeah. And I think to build on what you just said, I think it really falls in line with that saying of begin with the end in mind.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't know the end, and that's okay. That's okay. Maybe the end, evolves over time, but let's start somewhere. And if we think about the legacy that we want to leave when we eventually retire, when we sort of step off the treadmill, whatever that next chapter might be, we want to think about what are people going to say about the kind of leader I was, or the kind of people manager I was, or the kind of visionary that I was when I'm not in the building anymore. That's the kind of stuff we talk about in that step 2 around what you want to stand for. Because if you can start planting those seeds and repeatedly kind of beating that drum, whatever it is, 10, 15 years even before you actually exit, then you're building a legacy.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great idea. All right. So what's the next step, Jess?
Yeah. So number 3, now we get into let's start creating some content. We know who we're talking to. We know what we want to stand for. Let's pick a platform and begin to create content that is, again, in our actual voice, imperfections and all. And I know, Karin, you mentioned earlier, sometimes you leave the mistakes in when you're recording.
And there are many.
Well, and that's great. That makes you relatable. That builds trust with your audience, and they see that you're a human.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
And that's lovely. It's lovely. But again, we all have, I think, a natural reaction to want to kind of wash that out and sort of edit it out. And I know where that comes from. And I feel that, of course, in moments too. But when you look at the data, the people who are out there sharing things about vulnerability, imperfection, they're not always perfectly done up. They're talking about mistakes they've made in their career and what they learned from it. There's a million angles, but they're showing a fuller human picture of them as a leader or an owner. That is what gets the engagement, gets the sharing, gets the comments. You see the real conversations start to open up. And what it really is doing, frankly, it's not just what's happening in the whatever digital platform we're talking about. It's paving the way for, again, their business development team, their sales team, their partnership team to now, when they go into having conversations with prospects, if those prospects have seen what that leader's been doing, that's a much warmer sort of trusting dialogue, right? There's already been those seeds planted.
Yeah. Now, when we talk about relatable, though, I'd love to discuss some of the guardrails around that because, you see stuff on social where, people are washing their face and having conversations. Like, you have to decide, I would imagine, where you're going to bump up against the comfort zone and what's acceptable in your role, correct? Like, how do you guide leaders in those terms?
Yeah. Well, in my experience, usually it's me pulling them a little bit out and them being a little reluctant.
Right. As opposed to like, I want to just go on camera and have no, in my case, makeup on, my hair not done and washing my face. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I haven't had as many experiences where I'm having to kind of put them back in the box. So maybe I'll encounter that at some point. But I would just go back to, again, that idea of what is your why? What is your strategy? If you're selling a brand that is about, healthy skincare, it might, if you're Gwyneth Paltrow, right? It's Goop. Sure. It might make sense for her to wake up and show her morning routine, right?
But she also wakes up looking like Gwyneth Paltrow. So I feel like that's an unfair comparison.
Right, yes. That's the best example. Totally.
Yes. But I get it. I understand. Yeah. If it's like aligning with your brand, your product brand, and that makes more sense. Yes. Okay. Carry on.
Right. Like, it doesn't probably make sense for someone who's in B2B tech to be washing their face on camera. Like, what are we talking about right now?
Right. But I feel like sometimes that happens. Like, it's a trend, right? You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I would, if that situation did come up, which would be actually a really comical situation, I would tend to go back to that narrative platform, that step 2 we talked about, and say, all right, so we decided here are your 3 pillars. I'm totally cool with you doing what you want to do. At the end of the day, this is your brand, it is your platform. But ask yourself, how is, washing your face in public, how is that supporting you as an AI futurist?
Yes. Great point. All right. So carry on.
Yeah, no. So step 4 and 5 are pretty straightforward. So I'm a big believer in being a master of one. So not kind of the peanut buttering across 3, 4, 5, 6 platforms in the beginning, right? If you're just getting started or you're feeling, again, a little unsure, reluctant about how this is going to play out, let's pick one platform. Often for many of my clients, that's LinkedIn, but it doesn't have to be. It depends on, again, who you are, where you maybe already are spending some time yourself.
Yeah.
It could be that, again, if you're really used to doing interviews or you're used to being on stage, podcast guesting could be a really natural segue for you. So I would just discuss with them, what is the space that we want to start with? Let's go deep on that one. And then over time, we can build.
Yeah.
And they'll also start to see, again, metrics, month over month, quarter over quarter. We can see the changes, the growth. We can kind of learn and iterate, but we're just focusing on one at a time. So that's number 4. And then the last one, number 5, I love this saying that relationships are built in the comments. And we've got, of course, comments in social. Often there's ways to leave comments or reviews with podcasts. There's comments in blogs. So comments, YouTube videos, comments are really a ubiquitous opportunity, depending on whatever platform you choose. And I think that the logic here is that people still sometimes are looking at digital platforms as a kind of a publishing, like a one-way push.
Yes.
I'm going to make this beautiful piece of content. I'm going to put it out in the world and I'm going to walk away.
Move on to the next thing, right?
Go to the next thing. Yes, yeah. Right. Because part of it is your time constraint, which is, again, a piece of what I do is help them sort of organize their time. And be a second set of eyes too for stuff like this. But the idea that relationships are built in the comments is really rooted in, if you're actually coming back to your content and you're responding and you're maybe having even a back and forth occasionally, then not only does that give you real feedback on your content, which could spawn future content, right? Or other ideas could come out of that. But it's also telling your following that you're present, that you actually are listening to what they have to say. And that's where the real trust is built.
Yeah. I always talk about how if you're managing a meeting and you are asking people to put comments or questions in chat, you've got to look at it. You've got to attend to it, or else it just becomes this parking lot for ideas that never see the light of day. And I imagine, comments would be the same way. And boy, I'm somebody who has a hard time keeping up with that. With the comments. So, when you're talking about, you have to go back and check it. I'm like, I definitely need some help with that. But let's talk a little bit about the idea of trust. What role does trust play in having a strategic social presence?
It's everything. I mean, it's everything. It's, you think about digital platforms are really a reflection of humanity at scale. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, and again, maybe it's just because it's relatively new in the world of marketing and communications, which is, 150 plus year practice, right? Like way back. Yeah. And so maybe we're still sort of sorting it out and trying to kind of think about how it reflects the way that we show up. But it is just a much larger territory to really exhibit the way that we would build a relationship, the way that we would talk in a face-to-face fashion. Yeah. And so when we think about building trust in just a natural, again, human face-to-face way, it's things like following through with your word, right? Having integrity. It's things like admitting when you're wrong, or when you've made a mistake or an error, and then, moving on, right? It all happens to us. It's things like showing empathy for others when they're going through a tough time and again, maybe relating to it in some form or fashion. It's the same tools that we would use in our friendships and in our relationships in real life. And I'm a believer that now that digital has been around for 20 plus years, it's matured and the level of sophistication is at a level where we need to bring those same skills and tools into these platforms. And when we do that, especially again in a leadership role where we have a bit of a stage, we are setting the example for the rest of our organization. Number one, we're telling our team, this is how we do business. And number two, again, going back, potential customers and clients who are watching and following, they may not even ever say anything out loud. They're just absorbing it, right? We know the 80-20 rule. Yep. 80% of people are not actually taking any action, but they're watching, right? They're seeing how we write, how we show up on film, how we sound in AirPods in our ears. And that is building rapport and trust and relatability that, again, sets the stage for good partnerships, right? Good business relationships from here on out.
Let's devote the last bit of our conversation to mistakes that leaders make when it comes to their social presence. What are the things that are red flags that we should be watching out for?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier sort of the kind of just the reposting of kind of corporate. Again, occasionally that's fine. There's boxes we have to check, and I understand. Great earnings call, that totally get it.
Yeah.
But if that's more than 40% of what you're putting out there, you might want to pause and go, what is this me? What am I doing? What's the purpose here? So the kind of just reposting of other sort of press release type content is not a best practice.
Okay.
I think that certainly, I think most people know better now, but maybe not all. Certainly getting into any kind of heated dialogue or debates about controversial topics, and that can vary from person to person, but whether that's politics, religion, there's just certain topics, again, unless that is what you do, and you are a politician. But if it's not what the practice is of, whatever your business or your team is responsible for, go back to, again, the narrative platform. Like, why am I getting involved in this conversation? And is this the right forum, a public place? Probably not. In most cases, it's not going to be the right forum. So just stay out of that. Yeah. And I mentioned earlier, and I've only seen this happen a couple times, and it's not common, but there are times when I've seen, for example, engineers inside of some of the companies I've worked at, not be completely aware that what they're working on has not been publicly disclosed yet. In their mind, they've been working on it for 18 months, right? These roadmaps are incredibly long. And so they will put it on a platform. LinkedIn's a great example of this, where they're really proud of what they're doing. Sure. And then we'll discover that that's been talked about publicly. And we're like, oh, okay, no, we got to delete that. That's not actually been shared. So be thoughtful just about making sure whatever it is that you are going to write, you've got, your own good common sense or a second set of eyes that can let you know if that has been publicly disclosed yet.
So if I'm listening to all that you've been sharing, all the goodness that you're sharing, it seems like, we are done with the days of letting the brand speak for itself. It really is the people behind the brand that folks want to hear from.
Yeah, well said.
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to give you an opportunity to say something well, because I like to leave my guests with one big takeaway from the conversation. What's the one thing that they can chew on until the next episode?
Yeah, thank you. I would say if I'm speaking to brand builders, again, senior leaders, entrepreneurs and founders, your most powerful differentiator is your story. And I just posted about this morning on LinkedIn. Lean in rather than obfuscate or sort of push down because maybe you feel like you're different or not, in some way not traditional or average. It's the reverse. Lean into what makes you uniquely you, because that's where the real connection and the impact that you can have on all of your listeners and followers comes to bear.
That's awesome. Jess Jensen, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us, with our viewers, with our listeners. Excellent advice.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
I love my conversation with Jess, and I hope that you did as well. You know, one of the places where authenticity seems to go to die is in our LinkedIn profiles. And actually, that's one of the areas that Jess is a specialist in, because she offers some free LinkedIn audits to people who are hoping to regain authenticity in that aspect of their digital profile. So I'm excited to share with you that this week's bonus content is a free 25-minute consultation with Jess Jensen, who will conduct a LinkedIn audit for you. Now, I will say space is limited. So if you are interested, I would hop on this as quickly as possible. And how do you do that? Well, go to speakerdynamics.com/bonus content, speakerdynamics.com/bonus content, and click on the episode with Jess Jensen, and it'll take you to a link that will allow you to sign up for your 25-minute free LinkedIn audit. It is well worth your time and effort. So once again, speakerdynamics.com/bonus content. Thanks, everybody, for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please pass it along to your family, friends, and colleagues so we can continue to build this community. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Until next time, everybody.